Hello, this is Angel. I am going to do my presentation on Denver Department of Human Services. Denver Department of Human Services is where I am currently doing my internship in the Youth Ongoing Unit. I wanted to start and just tell a little bit of information about Denver Department of Human Services. Their mission is to protect children, preserve and strengthen families, and to promote safe and permanent home for every child. We work to protect Denver's children and youth by providing services and advocacy while promoting family stability, respecting diversity, and working to strengthen family connections to community resources. Our goal is to work cooperatively with families to provide services to keep families together, working in collaboration with community agencies as well as Denver Police Department and Denver Juvenile Court. All allegations of child maltreatment are addressed through services designed specifically to identify and protect victims from further abuse. We are responsible for investigating physical child abuse, sexual abuse, and child neglect. And when working with families where abuse, neglect, or sexual abuse issues have been identified, our main goal of focus is to identify and address the safety issues that brought the family to our attention. To work on maintaining family safety in their own home when that is possible. Denver Human Services provides temporary placement of the child out of the child's home. We are committed to working with families on identifying relative kin, resources for children, and keeping the children in their own community. We work towards reunifying children safely with their parents and creating a permanent plan for welfare of every child. Families involved in our services will receive direct services from a caseworker combined with services, community, and other service providers. Other services we provide include substance abuse, mental health treatment for parents and children, home-based services, and sexual abuse treatment. We are committed to protecting children, working with families, and respecting the process of change. Since I am working in youth services has a little bit of the same focus, but we also work with children dealing with delinquency or truancy. With adolescent and youth services, we provide services and support to adolescents, victims of maltreatment, and those who are at risk of maltreatment if protective measures are not taken, as well as families. Additionally, we will help families of adolescents who are beyond control of their parents, including juvenile delinquents. We help youth and adolescents with issues such as history of abuse or neglect, substance abuse, delinquency, truancy, mental health diagnosis, and homelessness. We provide a range of services and support to adolescents and their families with specialties in diversion programs, intensive family treatment, addressing juvenile delinquency, and providing independent living and emancipation skills. By providing in-home family services and advocacy, we make every attempt to keep youth with their families. When youth and family situation make living in the home impossible, we explore other options such as foster care, residential treatment. The youth and families we work with are often involved in other systems such as Denver Juvenile Probation, the Juvenile Court, the Mental Health System, and Denver Public School Systems. Whenever possible, we work with the professionals in the other systems to develop an integrative treatment plan that will benefit the youth. The group home. So, the group home that I chose to do my presentation on is the group home that currently has the youth placed at their group home. So to tell a little bit more about the group home is ran by a couple, a man and a woman. The husband does work outside of the home full-time, but the woman is a full-time group home staff. So her day involves going to staffings, making sure the children are going to school, making sure they have on-site supervision if that's necessary, making sure that they are constantly being supervised, and also working with the families to arrange visitation and things like that. She has been running her group home for the last 8 years. Her father was a social worker and child advocate. Her father passed away about 5 years ago, and he is the reason that she got into this profession. She did go to school. She has her master's in psychology and is a licensed therapist. She did do therapy for a while. However, she decided that she wanted to work more closely with her families, just like her father did. So she joined her mother and her father, who also have group homes, and she started her own group home. She is an African American woman in her early 30s. She was athletic. She was part of track and basketball while she was in high school and in college. So, to discuss a little bit about my case and the youth that I chose, I will just call him Joe, since we don't want to give out his name. Joe is a 16-year-old African American male. He is very large in stature. He is about 6'2" and 250 pounds. Um, at his school and while he was in the Gilliam, he professionals and school faculty have sort of labeled him as a bully. Um, he plays football and basketball. He was recently removed from his aunt. His aunt is his adoptive mother. She adopted him. He was placed with her when he was 3 years old, but she didn't adopt him until he was, I believe, 11 years old. He is now placed at the group home that I was speaking of. He was placed at the group home because he had a probation revocation. He was not following the rules at home. He had left the home and was on the run for about a month. And he hadn't been following household rules. The things that Aunt expected was just that he would come home from school, that he would help her with chores, and that he would let her know where he was at. But he was actually leaving the home and going wherever he decided he wanted to go and not letting Aunt know. Um, and so Aunt was having a difficult time with him not following the rules in the home. So there was a DCP, which is a Denver Collaborative Partnership meeting, which is where we have members from the community. There are people from Denver Department of Human Services, Denver Probation, Senate Bill 94, Denver, I believe I said Denver Public Schools, um, mental health, staff from Gilliam, and people from the Department of Youth Corrections, and then also other uh, members that the family works with. So if they have any kind of mentors or anything like that in the community, we are all present. We present the case, we let them know what's going on, give them a history of the family, give them a history of their services with the department, a history of their engagement with probation, and then we come up with a plan. Generally, at the DCPs, that is where they vote to see if youth should be placed out of the home or if they should be part of Department of Youth Corrections, which is the equivalent to the adult prison system. And so the children can receive 0 to 2 years in commitment if they are if the members vote and decide that commitment is the best option. Usually that happens after we've already tried to do services, after they've had placement, and if the child is still not in compliance with probation and the family's home situation is um, not somewhere where the youth can be because family is either enabling the behavior, engaging in the behavior, or other situations. So at the DCP, it was decided that it would be best for Joe to be placed out of the home to avoid Department of Youth Corrections commitment. The current situation, the Denver Department of Human Services received an investigation for placement from the court. At that time, after the DCP was held, it was reported that Aunt did not want him in the home, and the parties also agreed that um, it wasn't best for him to be in the home. So the department did get an order to investigate for placement, so that way we could locate a placement for the youth. At this point in time, he does have ADHD, but he doesn't have substance abuse history. He reports that he doesn't smoke marijuana, he isn't drinking, um, he isn't engaging in dangerous behaviors when he's on the run. Sometimes we have kids that are engaging in living on the streets, very hardcore serious drugs, and they have serious mental health issues. At that point, we would look into residential placement. However, with Joe, he didn't have any of those issues, so we were going to investigate for a group home placement. Some of the history with why Aunt decided to suggest that he was placed out of the home is Joe has an older brother. He had a adjudication for sexually assaulting one of their younger cousins that is also in the home that Aunt also adopted. He became so he got on probation, services were provided, um, and he wasn't in compliance. He continued to get out of control, wasn't following the rules, and eventually he was committed to the Department of Youth Corrections for 2 years. When he was released from the Department of Youth Corrections, he did not want to return with Aunt, nor did Aunt want him to return, just because of where his behavior was and him not wanting to change. So currently, the brother is living on the streets. He doesn't have a home right now. So Aunt wanted to get ahead on things and stop Joe from following the same path as his brother. So that is one of the reasons why Aunt decided that she wanted to ensure that Joe had out-of-home services and had structure and had discipline before it were to lead up to commitment. Aunt also wanted him to have a mental health evaluation because he was having mood swings. His mom does have a mental health history. His biological mother, which is Aunt's foster sister, and Aunt's parents actually adopted the mom. She had a history of bipolar disorder, and she also had a history of schizophrenia, and she also had a crack addiction. Um, so mom, so Aunt did want, because of Joe's mother's history, she wants Joe to get a mental health assessment and mental health treatment, as well as trauma therapy. Joe's mother was murdered when he was 10 years old. Joe's mother had custody of him until he was 3 years old. Joe's mom, because of her crack addiction, she was constantly leaving Joe and his brother with relatives or anybody that was around. She would go on her crack binges and leave them for days um, on end, sometimes weeks, but she would come back. Um, Joe was actually born addicted to crack cocaine. Um, and so Joe has never really had, in those first 3 years, he didn't have a primary caregiver. He was going from family member to friend, back to mom, and back and forth. Um, and then when Joe was 10 years old, um, no, about 9 years old, his mom did get clean, and she moved back in with the family. Um, and she went back to school, obtained her CNA license. Um, she was doing in-home health services. She did have one client that she went to regularly. He was a older man that had elephantitis in his legs, so he wasn't able to move. She would go into the home and help him with cleaning the house and just taking care of himself, helping him with whatever he needed, finances, or um, and so what happened is that the the client that she had, his son also had a drug addiction, and so because of his drug addiction, he was stealing from his father, which was the client. And so because he was stealing from the father had found out one day and confronted the son when he was over there the same time that mom was there. So he confronted his son about him stealing money from his accounts. I don't know the details as to what happened, but because of the confrontation, the son killed his father and killed Joe's mother while she was at work. And she didn't come home for a few days. They were worried that maybe she might have relapsed. They hadn't heard from her. So finally, Auntie had called the police and they did a welfare check at the home. And they had been at the home, I believe, over a week. And nobody knew that they were there and that they were dead. And so the police did find them, and she was murdered with him. And so Joe had a very unstable attachment with his mother. He loved his mother dearly. He wanted to be with his mom, and by the time he was able to finally get that relationship with his mom, he had his mom for about a year where she was clean. She was living with them, and then she was killed. So he has had struggle with dealing with his mom's murder, and he is very close to his aunt. He does report that he loves his auntie. He loves that she's been there for him, but he also longs for that relationship with his mother that he wasn't able to have. So in cultural considerations that I looked into when I was looking for a placement for Joe, I did consider the family's religious background. The family is Baptist. The family does go to church regularly and they do attend church functions. Joe was expected to attend church regularly with his aunt. The group home that I did locate, uh, the the group home, they also are religious. They do go to church regularly. She does expect the youth to go to church with her every Sunday. She also attends a Baptist church. Um, since he is a young African American male, I did think that it was fitting to place him with a foster or a group home staff that is also African American. Um, Joe is very athletic. That is something that he stays, that is something that is a strength for him, and that is something that's always provided structure for him and has kept him out of trouble in times where he wasn't able to be on the team because of behavior or other issues is usually when his behavior or situations did get worse, or even during the summer or times when there isn't practice. Auntie did report that those are times that um, it seemed like the behavior would get worse. And so with this group home staff, she is athletic. She um, can relate with him. She is also very tall herself, and being a woman, she reports that she understands where he's coming from with kind of being looked at differently. As a woman, she is 6'1". She's always been athletic, and she understands where he comes from. And so they did find that as a connection, and I did feel like that was a good fit. We definitely would like to, if we are able to, keep children in homes that are similar to their cultural background. It is a little difficult sometimes because there aren't always placement options um, that have similar cultural backgrounds, especially when we deal with families that have immigrated or have language barriers, things like that. So I think it was really great that I was able to find such a close fit for placement. Joe's progress so far in his placement has been well. He has been in compliance with probation expectations. He hasn't dropped any dirty UAs. He has been making all of his weekly visits. Yeah, he has been doing unsupervised visits on the weekends with his aunt. So he has been able to go with his aunt on Sundays. He's been going to church with her, and he's also been able to spend 8 hours on Sundays with her. As if they continue to do well, we will increase those to overnights and possibly the whole weekend, but as of now, he is doing 8 hours on Sundays. And Ant's reporting he's doing good. He's very respectful. He has been getting good grades in school. That is one thing that he has a strength in is uh, he is gifted in academics. He has always had good grades, um, but he also has ADHD, which is something that uh, has made it difficult for him to concentrate in school and difficult for him to focus. However, when he is focusing and when he is on his medication, he does focus really well in school. Since being at this new school, he was accused of stealing. Um, I guess once he started the football team, there were some reports that some things were missing, cell phone, headphones, little things like that. So the school did contact the group home uh, provider and let her know that they were going to investigate him for theft. Um, they really didn't have any reason as to why they believed it was him. It wasn't like anybody seen him in the locker rooms at that time. It was basically just reported that he it started when he started school. The school is primarily white, and the neighborhood uh, is well off. It's a well off neighborhood with primarily white children. So we did set up a meeting with the principal because we wanted to just make sure that he wasn't being targeted. We wanted to make sure that there were valid reasons as to why he was being targeted, investigated. Um, Joe did feel that he was that the school was being racist against him. He didn't understand why they were accusing him. Um, so we did set up a meeting with the principal. We did agree that he would make sure that he's in his classes and not in halls that he's not supposed to be in. We haven't had any issues with him ditching classes or truancy yet, but we did want to make sure that he knew that he needed to be where he needed to be, so that way it didn't happen. And they had no reason to accuse him. So that situation was resolved. The school um, decided that they were going to stop their investigation. And then also what is coming up for Joe is he does have an IEP meeting. Um, and every 3 years, the students have to be retested for their IEPs. And but this year it isn't a testing year. It is just an update year. So we do have a meeting scheduled next week to make sure that his IEP is updated, and so we do assess his needs if he still needs it. What services does he need? What can help him? So Joe does have an IEP for emotional reasons and behavioral reasons because he does have ADHD, but it's not for academics. Also, probation has set up a mental health assessment. They have completed the mental health assessment. However, we have not received the report back from the psychiatrist that probation works with that does the mental health evaluations. Current resources that Joe has, he does have probation and probation services in place. Um, he does not have task involved. Usually they do have a task provider as well when they are engaging in substance abuse, but since he doesn't have substance abuse issues, he's never dropped a dirty UA, he denies any substance use, he does not have any task services. He does have an LEA, which is a law enforcement agent. The law enforcement agent is generally is a police officer that volunteers to work with the youth to just try to get them in the right path and try to be a mentor. And also, it's something that probation tries to use so that way if they can develop a strong relationship with a law enforcement agent, it helps. Well, the idea is that it will help them relate to law enforcement agencies instead of having this constant conflict or thinking of police or law enforcement as negative. If they can develop a positive relationship with law enforcement, that can help them not have that same issues with law enforcement. He also works with GRID, which is a gang prevention program. He reports that he isn't part of a gang. However, because he associates with other gang members in his neighborhood. Um, he has been set up with gang prevention services to try to keep him from being part of that gang, um, and also just it helps him with gang awareness. So he does do a weekly group with GRID, and he does work with other youth that are engaging in the same types of behaviors. They're not necessarily part of a gang yet, but they are associated with gangs. There are kids that are part of the gang, and they work with them on getting out of the gang, and with him they're working on making sure that he doesn't become a part of the gang. And his aunt does own her own business. She owns her own salon. She is very well known in her community, uh, and she does have a pretty successful salon. So that is beneficial for the family, for financial resources. However, it does put a strain because aunt does have to, her busiest work time is evenings and weekends because that's when most people aren't in work. So it does keep her away from the home. However, her salon is located right next to their home, so she is available to go and check on Joe when necessary. Um, Also, since the family is engaged in their church and they are uh, members of their church, they do have support from other church members. And Aunt does feel that the church does provide support to her when she does need somebody to talk to. So, part of my analysis, I looked into different academic journals, and I located one journal. It was by Chase, Waukesha, Waukesha Lab, and Brooks, and it was written in '95. It is a journal. The journal is a journal of psychological perspection on development of caring in children and youth, the role of the family. uh, People's attachment relationships are highly influenced by the quality of parenting. Um, and so with Joe's parenting, it was, he did have a hard time during parenting. Um, the journal also goes on to explain how secure attachments in a person's internalized sense of significant others as trustworthy, loving, and available. The development of trust of others is also critical. In, it's a critical thing that children develop during their attachments. Um, Parents develop positive development by responding to infants' signals and cues appropriately. Infants know the difference between a secure and sociable world versus an unresponsive, chaotic, and frightening one. Caring children and youth experience caring relationships themselves. They develop trust in availability and accessibility of others, the ability to interpret others' emotions and behaviors and take their perspective, and they're able to respond accordingly. They place the needs of others ahead of themselves at times. Opportunity for perspective taking, empathy, um, act, activities foster children's own caring and behavior. So those are things that he would have had to develop. Since his mother was in and out of his life, um, I am unsure as to what type of attachment he developed since he was so young. I believe that he did not develop a secure attachment since he was with mother some days, with different family members, different friends, and it wasn't any stable, consistent primary caretaker until he was 3. She would leave him with random caretakers for days and weeks before she would turn from her binges. Um, I believe that Joe loves his aunt, but I don't know that he knows how to show his appreciation. I also think that it conflicts with how much he loves and has longed for his mom. He wants his mom's attention. He wanted his mom's love, and now he has lost his mom altogether. So he's lost that ability to receive that love that he's wanted from his mom. But he knows that his aunt is there for him. He knows that his aunt has always been there for him, and he loves and appreciates her. I'm just not sure that he has learned or knows how to show his appreciation. Um, The client has been labeled and known to be a bully to his peers, um, and I believe that his insecure attachment can also be part of why he is known to be a bully or has a bullying nature. I don't believe that he has been able to know how to show his caring side because he wasn't able to be shown it in those early years. I do believe now with his aunt he has been shown it, and so he does have friends. He can make friends, but he also struggles with um, the treatment of other peers that aren't his friends. He's not able to uh, reflect on their feelings and know how to treat them. Um, he wasn't able to develop a healthy trust and healthy empathy. According to Pompeo, Kuhlman, and Pierce in 2014, on an article, Interplay of Psychological Development, they believe separation from a young man's mother is necessary for a boy's identity development. A young man is threatened by attachment, and their independence is central to a young man's development. He never had a healthy separation from his mother. He hasn't had closure with his mother's brutal murder. He pulls away from his aunt now that he is 16. That can also be a part of his psychological development because his aunt is the person who raised him and is the closest person to fill his mother's role. So even though he loves and appreciates his aunt, part of his growth and development and independence is being able to separate from his caretaker. He has been having trouble in school. According to David Elkind, children with special needs, uh, an article on children with special needs and the postmodern approach, he reported that children with special needs were once treated as a group apart from other students and separated from the norm as part of the postmodern conception. Residential schools were established because they believed they could not function in everyday world. After the Education Act idea, children with disabilities have been mainstreamed into regular classrooms, but the issue there is that teachers were not given support services needed to effectively deal with the special needs in the classroom. Postmodern conception, including learning disabilities as well as behavior and psychological disorders. So with Joe, he does not have a learning disorder. He is advanced in academics. He speaks well and is very intelligent. He is athletic and dominant, but he also still suffers from ADHD and has emotional and behavioral needs. So that is why he has an IEP. I believe sometimes teachers and school staff overlook his needs because they see his academic success and his athletic success. And because of those abilities, I believe they expect more from him, and they sometimes overlook that he does have ADHD, and it is hard for him to stay focused uh, and and I think that that is one of the big issues he does have in school. Um, as far as his motivation, capacity, and opportunity to change, he is motivated to change because he does want to return home. He does not like being in out-of-home placement. He is doing well in the group home. He is getting along with the peers in the group home. He has a pretty close relationship with the group home staff. Um, However, he does want to go home. So I think that motivates him to change his behavior so that aunt and probation are willing to allow him to go home. He does have the opportunity to change because he does have so many services and agencies working together to help him with his behavior change. His capacity to change will depend on how he engages in his treatment. He suffers from secure attachment, but if he focuses on the new skills he is taught in treatment, he can be successful. The problems in school, um, kind of to go back, he does struggle with discrimination in his new school. He has been accused of stealing things from the school because the faculty reported things came up missing once he started the school. According to Toll, in Critical and Postmodern Perspective on School Change, school professionals do not do well with change. The existing system does not consider issues such as power and privilege, rather enforce existing social inequalities. I believe that is evident in the issue that we did have with the discrimination. I believe that I don't know that they think that they knowingly were doing that, but I believe that that is something they were doing. They were enforcing the existing social inequalities by not opening up their mind to change, and I think they haven't had to really deal with this until this group home has started to register their children in that school. I think that this is a school of privilege, and they don't generally see these type of students in their school. His diagnosis is that he currently has ADHD. He believes that he could possibly have bipolar disorder. He does have unresolved grief. Ant also is concerned that he might have RAD, which is reactive attachment disorder, because of his inability to develop a strong attachment to a caretaker. Um, I personally have not seen the mood swings. I do only meet with him once a month, and in the beginning I did meet with him more often because we were going through the court process and everything like that. Um, the group home is also not reporting the same mood swings. So I don't know if he is still fairly new in his placement. He's only been there for 2 months. So they do report that there is a honeymoon period when children do go to group homes. Uh, they are more well behaved. Intervention and plans we have for him. We do have the mental health assessment. It has already been conducted. We are just waiting for the report. I did do a trauma screen on Joe, and through the trauma screen, they did recommend trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's going to work with the youth and the aunt. Um, trauma focused cognitive behavioral therapy is evidence-based treatment approach shown to help children, adolescents, and caregivers overcome trauma-related difficulties, designed to reduce negative emotional and behavioral responses following child sexual abuse, domestic violence, or traumatic loss and other traumatic events. Caretakers' participation is essential. It combines cognitive therapy and behavioral therapy and family therapy as a base. Cognitive theories aim to change behaviors by addressing distorted beliefs, perceptions, and thinking patterns, modifying habitual responses, which would be fear, anger, to identified situations. Family therapy examines family interactions and identifies to alleviate problems. It helps parents cope effectively with their own emotional distress and develop skills to support children. It works well with children aged 3 to 18. It is typically 12 to 18 sessions for 50 to 90 minutes each, typically provided in the home, office, hospital, group home, school, community, adoptive home, birth family home, community agency, foster home, outpatient clinics, or schools. They will, in this particular situation, they are going to be meeting weekly in the aunt's home. Since our goal is for him to return home, they would like to work in that home so that way they can work on the issues that are going on in the home, since aunt is seeing behaviors that the group home and the caseworker isn't seeing. I did create a treatment plan for Joe. In the treatment plan, our treatment plans aren't really designed for the intervention that's going to happen as far as the therapeutic treatment, but it is going to be what the department expects for him to be able to return home. So in our treatment plan, he is going to attend school. He is going to cooperate with probation. He is going to cooperate with Department of Human Services. He will engage in treatment, and that's with any treatment providers that we decide. Right now it's going to be the cognitive behavioral treatment, but if probation adds any other component, we will include that as well, especially once the mental health evaluation comes back. If they decide that they want him to have treatment, we will incorporate that as well. He is to engage with GRID. He is going to engage with his LEA. He will remain sober. He will follow the rules at the group home, and he will not pick up any new charges. So for my discussion and any kind of questions that I have, the questions I did say is, do you think RAD or bipolar disorder could be possible diagnoses? Why do you think he is displaying these behaviors home more than in the professional setting? I hope you enjoyed my presentation, and I look forward to the discussions.